Hello, Women of the Channel Leadership Network, and welcome to another Woman of the Week. This week, I'm very excited to be celebrating one of our advisory board members with our exchange events, Rosana Filingeri, Vice President of Business Development of Cybersafe Solutions. Hi, Rosana. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to get to know you better, even though we did get to spend a little time at exchange. So let's start with some of those icebreaker questions. Where do you live and where did you grow up, if that's different?
Sure. So I live in New York. I actually live 1 minute from the house I grew up in. So I was one of those people who never moved far away from their parents. So I grew up here. I love New York. I moved away for college. I moved away after college for my first job down to Southwest Florida. And it was just, there's nothing like New York.
That's completely fair. I love New York. Any chance I get to visit, I'm there. All right. What is a little known fact about you that you're willing to share with all of us?
So I guess it's a fun fact, really. So I'm a triplet. So I have two sisters. Yep.
I
I
didn't
didn't tell you.
know.
Yep. So I have two sisters. We are best friends. We all have our own little things. So I'm the only one that went into tech, but they're both awesome. And everyone always asks, like, would I confuse you with them? And the answer is actually no. So we definitely resemble each other, but they look pretty different. Like if we were in the same room, I don't think that you would know out of the gate that they were my sisters. So I don't have any doubles running around. That would be cool to
That's so cool. And do they live in New York with you? Like,
They
too?
do. Yeah. So
Oh,
the whole
very nice.
so that's part of the reason why I was like, oh,
Yeah. Yep, that totally makes sense. I get that.
mm.
All right. Well, let's pivot to more on the professional side, but like some of these questions might be a little personal too. What are some experiences or transformational moments you've had in your life?
Good question. So I think my biggest transformational moment to date, obviously I'm a little young in my career, but to date, when I took a job first out of college, I told you I moved. It was an amazing organization. Uh, but what I expected out of college, let me backtrack. I was raised to always believe, like, if you want, to achieve anything in the world, put your mind to it, and you will. And then I went to a college that like reinforced that. I went to High Point University, um, amazing school. If anyone's interested, I would check it out. So it was, very much of a reinforcement. Whereas, the opportunity was endless as long as you worked hard enough, you could receive it. I was a little bit humbled once I joined the real world, and I realized that not everybody had that mentality, or not to say the organization I was working for didn't feel that way or didn't have opportunity for people. It was a little bit of a tough transition for me to walk into an environment, and I think this is just post college in general,
Mhm.
where you graduate and you expect for everyone to have it figured out, and the world to be sunshine and rainbows, when in reality it's usually not, right? So my biggest transformational moment was to understand that no matter what was going on around me, didn't have to impact me, right? So if things were not as great, or if somebody wasn't as eager or as excited or didn't want something the same way that I did, that didn't have to discourage me. That was just what they wanted for themselves, right? So
Yeah.
it just told me again, shoot for the moon and you'll still end up against the stars, even if people don't always believe that. So that was big for me to learn coming into this real world, um, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I love that. And don't discount yourself. You're a VP of business development. So, even maybe younger in your career, you are definitely accomplished. So I
Thank
just wanted to say that. All right. Who or what do you look for in inspiration or mentorship?
So I look for inspiration in a bunch of different places, and mentorship really as well. So the things that inspire me are kind of along the same vein as I was describing. People that are just happy to grow and experience new things and want everyone to feel like they matter. So I think that especially in the cybersecurity space, it's so collaborative and
Mm.
so dynamic and it changes every 10 seconds. If a company didn't take into account, or if an individual didn't take into account the feedback or just perspective from folks that work in different roles, uh, then it would be a disservice to them. So what I look for is individuals that collaborate, that can share their perspective, can share their experience. Something I value the most about Cybersafe, and a little bit over 5 years with the organization, is everyone does get to share that perspective, and everyone does get to give what inspires them and what fires them up. And obviously, where applicable, the business is able to incorporate those things because the people are, your front lines, and listening to that and sharing ideas, I think, is what springboards companies. So from an inspiration perspective, anyone around me who's willing to share good ideas, I think something as well I learned from business, especially, is, not everybody has to have the right answer. But sometimes the person you least expect might or might have really great perspective. So getting to listen to those things is really important. And then for mentorship, I've been so fortunate to meet some really, really amazing people in their career. Some of them have been women in tech, which obviously sometimes it's hard to find. Other times they've just been, people that have been really great sounding boards for me. And something that I learned again early on, humbling experiences, don't always be afraid to ask for help, right? I think
Mhm.
I especially deal with this all the time in cybersecurity. Uh, our organization, we partner with uh, the clients that we support, right? It's not meant to say that they're not capable or they're inferior. I always view it as doctors, right? Everybody just has specialties.
Yeah.
So in those cases, a lot of the times what I've noticed is, let's not always expect to have an answer. Let's collaborate on an answer. So I've learned so many different things from mentors, from clients, from relationships, all in general. So I've been really fortunate over the last couple of years.
I love, 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 love your answers. Listening is so key, and just never knowing where you're going to find that next bright idea and being open to that, like you said, where you least expect it. And of course, collaboration. I know I get lost when I'm not interacting and collaborating with people to drum up those new ideas and solutions to business problems. So, all great, great
Right.
answers.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be a good spot to pivot because I feel like some of what you've already said is going to play into my next question, which is how you define successful leadership.
So I think how I define successful leadership is someone that can be a good champion, can be a good coach, could be a good advocate, but most importantly, a good listener. I, in my days, again, in my career, especially earlier on, I did encounter, not with CyberSafe, but beforehand, I did encounter someone who wasn't the strongest boss. And I think I learned so much from dealing with that person every single day, probably more than I've learned in the last couple years. I probably learned in 2, 3 weeks of dealing with this individual, right when I met them. What I set out to realize is, I never want to be that person that people don't feel like they can talk to or collaborate with. So I think being a good leader is someone who could take into account all of the things like we were just discussing,
Mm-hmm.
um, but also lean into things when necessary, right? Of course, there needs to be direction and there needs to be vision, and there needs to be a strategy for a team, a plan, an organization. But I think the best leaders are the ones that ingrain themselves in the trenches enough to see it and learn it and have done it before. So before I was vice president of business development, I started in really every job, right? I took a introductory job with CyberSafe and I really got to learn and spend time with and sit with all the different teams that make this company so special and so unique. I think without that perspective and without that understanding, I don't know I would have the full picture. So I'm really thankful for that. So I think strong leaders are the ones that are not above any task. They're the ones that say, hey, look, there's a problem. Let's go get it done, and figuring out a way to get to that solution.
I love that answer, and I couldn't agree with you more. Um, I'm sure that you learned a ton as you learned other people's roles. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do because we never know how our decisions and what we do is going to impact another extended part of our team. So loved your insights. All right. I think we have time for one more. So let's go with who are some individuals who inspired you in your journey so far?
Good question. So I think the most important people have always been my family. My parents, like I mentioned, are just the most supportive people on the planet. They're good sounding boards, they're good resources, they're good, champions for me. Even if I was dealing with something that I felt was a big challenge in the moment, um, they helped me step back and realize, think about it with a clear head. I got to learn from them those things. And my sisters inspire me every single day because they're both amazing and awesome at their careers. I learned my work ethic, I think, from my grandparents who all immigrated to America and they came from Italy. You know, tell by me talking with my hands. uh, Came over from Italy and, they really had to build themselves a life. And they've been very, very fortunate, very successful, but they didn't get there without hard work. And then lastly, my fiance. So he's been just a great resource for me, just in all fronts. He's like the yin to the yang for me. So sometimes when I do need that other fresh perspective or whatever, he's a really good person to run things by, and then he can help me think about things, maybe from a man's lens, maybe not. I don't know. But it's important to listen to all sides. So between them, I've been so lucky to have just the best support system I could possibly imagine, and I think it's part of the reason that I've been able to do so much and learn so much and achieve certain things because of the people that
Oh, I love that. You reminded me of something you said earlier too, in just having that variety of people that you trust to kind of be that, personal advisory board for us and be willing to say like, hey, I see what you're saying, but like switch the lens and like challenging us to kind of change that lens and see it from a different perspective. So no doubt that you are just surrounded by the most amazing family. And congratulations on your engagement and your upcoming wedding in 2024. Uh, Rosana, thank you so much for spending some time and sharing a little of your personal journey with all of us here in the Women of the Channel Leadership Network.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, there you have it. Rosana is our Woman of the Week. So let's be sure to comment, give her some feedback, cheer her on in her journey for her willingness to share that with all of us today. Until next time, happy Wednesday.